Hey everyone, welcome to Best of Reddit Reality. This story was generated using AI to deliver a relatable, emotionally grounded experience with a real-life lesson. It might be fictional, but the struggle and message are all too real. Part 1: The Chameleon Phase. If you ask anyone who knew me 5 years ago who I was, they'd probably give you a flattering answer. Jake. Oh yeah, he's awesome, he's into everything. Music, fitness, design, hiking, books, he's super chill guy. What they wouldn't say is, Jake knows who he is. Because I didn't. What I had was an identity built like a mirror reflecting back whatever the people around me liked, admired, or expected. It started small. In high school, I realized I could fit into different friend groups just by adapting a bit. Around the nerds, I was quoting Marvel and geeking out over coding projects. With the athletes, I suddenly cared a whole lot about protein shakes and basketball stats. With the drama kids, I had deep thoughts on Shakespeare and improv. At first, it felt like a skill being able to connect with anyone. People liked me. I liked being liked. Who doesn't? But somewhere along the line, that skill became a shield. College made it worse. New people, new environments, a new pressure to belong, and I leaned hard into the chameleon persona. I followed Instagram trends I didn't even enjoy. I joined clubs I had no real interest in. I even dated someone for 6 months because I liked how we looked in photos together. Not because I actually liked her. The worst part, I wasn't even doing it consciously. I truly believed I was interested in all these things until I was alone. And when I was, the silence was deafening. One weekend during junior year, I went on a trip with 5 close friends to a cabin. We brought board games, snacks, drinks, and a lot of expectations for fun. It was meant to be chill, just vibes and bonding. But on the second night, we started playing this casual, late-night version of Truth or Dare. It wasn't wild or crazy, just real questions. Then it hit me. Someone asked, "What's something no one knows about you?" And when it got to me, my mind went blank. Not because I didn't have secrets, but because I didn't know which version of me had the secret. What would surprise them? What even was true about me that I hadn't manufactured to fit the moment? Everyone stared, waiting for an answer. I laughed it off and said something dumb like, "I used to eat hot dogs with peanut butter as a kid." They laughed, moved on, and the moment passed. But I couldn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the cabin ceiling, spiraling. I couldn't name a single thing about myself that wasn't filtered through someone else's preferences. Every playlist I made, tailored. Every movie I watched, based on recommendations. Even my dream job in UX design. Something I picked up after hearing it praised at a party. I had spent my whole life performing, and I didn't even realize I was on stage. The rest of the trip felt weird after that. No one else noticed I was still fun Jake. Still laughing, still engaged. But inside, I had started crumbling. On the drive back, I stared out the window while everyone else chatted and joked around me. My chest felt tight. I kept thinking, if I disappeared right now, would anyone even miss the real me? Or just the version I gave them? Back at school, I told my roommate I was feeling burnt out and needed space. That part was true. But what I didn't say was that I had decided quietly, without fanfare, that I was going to stop pretending. I didn't know who I'd find under all those layers, but I was ready to meet him. Part to becoming a stranger to everyone, including myself. After that trip, things didn't change overnight, but they did start changing. The first week back at college, I deleted my Instagram. Not deactivated, deleted. It felt dramatic, like I was cutting off a limb. But I needed to stop broadcasting a version of me that wasn't real. The curated smiles, the likes, the carefully filtered stories, It was all fuel for a character I no longer wanted to play. I also stopped texting back as fast. Not to be rude, but to pause and ask myself, do I actually want to hang out? Or do I just feel like I should? It turns out I didn't want to do a lot of the things I had been doing. Group brunches where no one really talked? Nah. Movie nights with people I barely connected with? Club meetings I joined just to look well-rounded dropped? The more I pulled back, the lonelier it got, but strangely, the quieter it became inside my head too. I started noticing what I actually enjoyed. I took long walks without music, just me and my thoughts. I found this tiny local bookstore and started going every Saturday. And I rediscovered a weird little passion I had as a kid, writing dumb short stories. I'd open my laptop at night, no agenda, no pressure, and just write about imaginary people who were brave enough to be themselves even when it sucked. Funny how fictional characters often have more honesty than real people. But of course, not everyone understood the change. Friends started asking if I was okay. Some were genuinely concerned, others were annoyed. "You've been distant lately, man. You're not coming to Jason's party? You love parties." Except I didn't. I love being seen at parties. That's different. There was this one moment that hit especially hard. I ran into Amanda, my ex from earlier that year. We hadn't ended badly, but we hadn't talked since. She said, "You seem different." I replied, "I think I'm just trying to figure out who I actually am." She smiled. "That's good. I hope you find him." Then she paused and said something I'll never forget. "I don't think I ever met him." Oof. It stung, but she was right. The hardest part wasn't losing people. It was realizing how few of them actually knew me to begin with. I started journaling, something I used to mock. But putting my thoughts down raw, unfiltered, was like therapy. Some entries were angry. Some were sad. Some were full of cringe-worthy self-reflection. But they were mine. That became my test for everything going forward. Is this mine or someone else's? My taste in music, mine. My morning routine, mine. My career dreams, and maybe still figuring that one out. But at least now I was asking. Then something strange happened. The more I stopped trying to impress others, the more I started attracting people who actually aligned with who I really was. A guy in my ethics class overheard me talking about an obscure book I was reading and invited me to a local book club. A girl I thought was way out of my league struck up a conversation after I gave a brutally honest opinion during a class discussion. We ended up grabbing coffee. It was awkward but real. I didn't have to pretend. And that felt better than being liked ever. Still, the process wasn't linear. There were days I felt completely adrift, like I had burned the map but didn't know where I was headed. There were moments I wanted to slip back into old habits just to feel accepted again. But then I'd remember how empty that used to feel, how performing drained me, how fake smiles and shallow praise never filled the void. Now, when I smiled, it was real. When I laughed, it wasn't rehearsed. And when I said no to things, it wasn't from fear but from freedom. By the end of that semester, I had fewer friends but stronger relationships. Less noise but more peace. Less approval but more authenticity. And for the first time in my life, I could look in the mirror and say, yeah, you know that guy. Part 3: The person I was always meant to be. By the start of senior year, I was no longer trying to reinvent myself. I was simply trying to understand myself. It wasn't perfect. I still caught myself slipping into old habits sometimes, especially around certain people. But the difference now was awareness. I noticed when I was shifting to please someone else. And I'd ask why. What am I afraid of? Most of the time, the answer was simple: rejection. The truth is, we don't shape ourselves to impress people because we're bad or manipulative. We do it because we want to be loved. We think if I'm more likable, I'll be more lovable. But love built on performance is hollow. It feels good temporarily until it doesn't. One day, I was walking through campus when I passed a group I used to hang out with all the time. They were laughing and taking selfies for someone's story. A year ago, I would have rushed over, jumped in, and tried to belong. But now, I just smiled and kept walking. Not our arrogance, just peace. It felt like I had stepped out of a noisy room and closed the door gently behind me. The biggest turning point came in the final semester. My college was hosting a Life After Graduation speaker series. One of the talks was titled, "Why You Should Stop Chasing the Person You Think You're Supposed to Be." It sounded like it was written for me. The speaker, a woman in her 40s, shared how she spent 15 years in a corporate job she didn't like because it looked impressive on paper. She only left after a health scare forced her to reevaluate her life. She said something I wrote down and never forgot. When you live to impress others, you give away the one thing that's truly yours yourself. That line stuck with me for days. It wasn't dramatic. It was just true. I started having deeper conversations with people, especially the ones who stuck around during my unraveling phase. I found out that a few of them were going through similar things, but were too scared to talk about it. Turns out, a lot of people are tired of pretending. We just all pretend a little longer because no one wants to go first. I still remember my final presentation in my UX class. It was supposed to be a case study on a user interface design for a social app. Instead, I pitched an idea for an app that helps people track their authenticity, how often they do things for themselves versus for others. My professor was confused. Some classmates laughed. But I didn't care. It was an idea born from my own journey. I stood by it. That night, one student, someone I'd barely spoken to, emailed me privately and said, "That was the first time I felt like someone in this class was being real. Thank you." That meant more to me than any grade ever could. This story was created with the help of AI to explore a deeply human lesson. You don't have to impress everyone. You just need to be honest with yourself. Because once you stop living for the applause, you can finally hear your own voice. And that voice, it's worth listening to. Thanks for watching Best of Reddit Reality. If this story resonated with you, drop a comment, share your thoughts, or just take a second to breathe and remember, you're allowed to be exactly who you are. See you in the next story.